We live in a world dominated by corporations. They control what we eat, what we wear, what we watch, and increasingly how we live our lives. We're told they're job creators, innovators, and drivers of progress. And while that can be true, there's a darker side to these corporate behemoths, a side that often gets swept under the rug with a meticulously crafted press release and a carefully curated public image. This isn't about some small-time businesses cutting corners. We're talking about systemic issues within some of the most powerful entities on Earth. We're talking about tax loopholes big enough to drive a fleet of gold-plated yachts through labor practices that would make a Dickensian factory owner blush, and environmental damage so vast it's practically visible from space. So, buckle up, dear viewers, because over the next few minutes we're going to shine a light on the dark underbelly of the corporate world, exposing the inconvenient truths they'd rather you didn't see. Let's start with everyone's favorite topic, taxes. Yes, the thing that makes us all groan and reach for the aspirin. You know, that thing you and I have to pay so we don't get audited into oblivion. The thing that keeps us up at night wondering if we missed a deduction or two. Well, it turns out that for many multinational corporations, paying taxes is more of a suggestion, like wearing pants to a Zoom meeting, technically recommended, but ultimately optional. They have a whole different playbook. We're talking about companies that rake in billions in profits and yet somehow manage to pay a lower tax rate than your average barista. Yes, the person making your morning coffee might be contributing more to the tax system than these corporate giants. How do they do it, you ask? Well, it's a delightful little cocktail of loopholes, exemptions, and creative accounting known as tax avoidance and evasion. It's like a magic trick, but with numbers and legal jargon. One of their favorite tricks is something called profit shifting. It's a strategy that would make Houdini proud. It's a bit complicated, but essentially they make profits in one country, say where they sell a lot of products, and then magically make those profits disappear, only to reappear in another country with lower taxes, like a tropical island with a relaxed approach to corporate finances. It's like a financial teleportation act. Then there's transfer pricing, which is basically like letting corporations decide how much their internal transactions are worth. It's a game of make-believe with real money. It's like selling yourself a car for $5 and calling it a day, except the car is actually a subsidiary full of profits, and the IRS is left wondering why your tax return smells faintly of desperation and offshore banking. It's a clever way to keep the taxman at bay. These practices cost governments, and by extension, you and me, trillions of dollars in lost revenue. That's a lot of zeros that could be put to better use. Money that could be used for, important things like healthcare, education, or maybe even fixing that pothole that's been trying to swallow your car whole for the past 6 months. Imagine the possibilities if that money was actually collected and used for the public good. Now, let's talk about where those products you love so much actually come from. Have you ever wondered about the journey they take before reaching your hands? Because behind those shiny gadgets and trendy clothes often lies a hidden world of sweatshops and exploited workers. These are the unseen faces behind our everyday conveniences. We're talking about factories where people, often children, toil away in dangerous conditions for meager wages. Imagine working long hours with little to no safety measures in place. These aren't just abstract concepts, they're real people with families, dreams, and the basic human right to a safe and dignified workplace. They deserve the same respect and safety that we expect in our own jobs. But in the relentless pursuit of profit, these rights are often trampled on like a shareholder at a Black Friday sale. Corporate greed prioritizes profit margins over human lives. We've all seen the horrifying images of collapsed factories and heard the stories of workers forced to endure inhumane conditions. These tragedies are not isolated incidents, but symptoms of a broken system. But it's all too easy to distance ourselves from these realities, to tell ourselves that it's just the cost of doing business in a globalized world. We must remember that our choices have far-reaching impacts. But here's the thing, it doesn't have to be this way. Change is possible, and it starts with us. We, as consumers, have the power to demand better. Our purchasing decisions can drive companies to adopt more ethical practices. We can choose to support companies that prioritize ethical sourcing, and fair labor practices. By doing so, we encourage a market that values human dignity. We can refuse to buy products that come with a hidden price tag of human suffering. Our collective voice can make a significant difference. It's time to stop turning a blind eye to the plight of these workers. Awareness is the first step towards meaningful change, because their fight is our fight and their dignity is inextricably linked to our own humanity. Together we can build a fairer, more just world for everyone. From exploiting workers, let's move on to something even bigger, the environment. Because when it comes to polluting our planet, corporations make your average gas-guzzling SUV look like a solar-powered tricycle. We're talking about oil spills that devastate marine life, deforestation that wipes out entire ecosystems, and toxic waste dumps that poison communities for generations. It's enough to make you want to build a bunker out of recycled plastic bottles and live off the grid. But here's the kicker. These companies often spend more money on lobbying against environmental regulations than they do on actually cleaning up their act. It's like throwing a party, trashing the entire house, and then bribing the landlord not to evict you. And while they're busy playing fast and loose with our planet's future, they're also busy greenwashing their image, trying to convince us that they're actually environmentally conscious. It's like a coal company handing out reusable shopping bags at a climate change rally. But we're not falling for it anymore. We're demanding accountability, transparency, and a commitment to sustainable practices. Because the Earth is not their corporate playground, it's our home, and it's time they started acting like it. Remember playing Monopoly as a kid? Remember the joy of bankrupting your friends and becoming a ruthless real estate tycoon? Well, in the real world, monopolies aren't so fun, especially when they're controlled by corporations that have more money than some small countries. We're talking about industries where a handful of companies control the market, crushing competition, dictating prices, and stifling innovation. It's like playing Monopoly, where one player starts with all the properties, and the rest of us are just stuck trying to avoid landing on boardwalk. And how do these corporations get so big and powerful? Well, it's a combination of aggressive mergers and acquisitions, ruthless business practices, and of course, good old-fashioned lobbying. Because it turns out that when you have enough money, you can basically buy influence in government. You can lobby for favorable regulations, weaken antitrust laws, and create a system that benefits the few at the expense of the many. It's a rigged game, folks, and it's time to demand a level playing field. We need to break up monopolies, strengthen antitrust enforcement, and get corporate money out of politics, because a fair and competitive market is essential for a healthy economy and a just society. We live in a world of instant gratification where everything is available at our fingertips with just a few clicks. From ordering food to buying the latest gadgets, convenience is king. But that convenience often comes at a hidden cost, a cost that's often borne by the most vulnerable among us. The people who make our products often work in deplorable conditions. We're talking about supply chains that stretch across the globe, often shrouded in secrecy and rife with human rights abuses. These supply chains are complex and difficult to trace. We're talking about the mining of conflict minerals, used in our phones and laptops, fueling wars and enriching warlords. These minerals are extracted under dangerous and inhumane conditions. We're talking about child labor in cocoa farms, where children work long hours for little pay, forced labor in garment factories, where workers endure harsh conditions to produce the clothes we wear, and exploitation in countless other industries. These workers are often paid meager wages and have no rights. It's a complex and deeply troubling reality, one that's easy to ignore when we're busy adding things to our online shopping carts. The allure of low prices and convenience blinds us to the suffering behind the scenes. But we can't afford to look away any longer. The human cost is too high. We need to demand transparency from corporations about their supply chains. We must insist on knowing where and how our products are made. We need to hold them accountable for the social and environmental impact of their operations. Corporate responsibility should be a non-negotiable standard. And most importantly, we need to start asking ourselves some tough questions. Questions that challenge our own habits and choices. Is that cheap t-shirt really worth the human cost? Are we willing to pay a little more for ethically made products? Is that new gadget worth turning a blind eye to suffering? Can we support companies that prioritize ethical practices? Because in the end, our choices have consequences, and they ripple out far beyond our immediate surroundings. And we have a moral obligation to choose wisely. Our decisions can drive change and make a difference in the lives of many. It's important to note that these are not isolated incidents, but systemic issues that require addressing. As consumers and citizens, we can demand greater transparency and accountability from corporations by supporting ethical brands. Choose companies that prioritize sustainability, fair labor practices, and social responsibility. Don't be afraid to vote with your wallet and support businesses that align with your values. Boycotting unethical companies. Use your purchasing power to send a message to corporations that engage in harmful practices. Let them know that you won't tolerate exploitation, environmental destruction, or unethical behavior. Advocating for stricter regulations, support policies that hold corporations accountable for their actions and protect workers, consumers, and the environment. Contact your elected officials, sign petitions, and make your voice heard, educating ourselves. Stay informed about corporate misconduct and share information with others. Knowledge is power, and the more we know about these issues, the better equipped we are to fight for change.